Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel Gone with Gandalf, and this is my second video on Amazon's Lord of the Rings series. This is a follow-up to the previous one that I made, and that did so well I'm going to do a second one. Now this one's going to be slightly different because I've had a look at some comments, some other videos as well, and people ask a lot of questions about who's going to be in it, what they'd like to see as well, so I've had some time to think about that, and of course one major character, one key player in the Second Age is going to be Sauron. So I have written down on a bit of paper down here 4 different phases of Sauron in the Second Age. And this is derived predominantly from the Silmarillion, so if you're familiar with that, it's going to be in that. And by the Silmarillion, again, I'm not going to sound like a broken record, but that is in Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. So that is all within the scope of the series, and they're allowed to include that in the show. Okay? And also, if you did watch the previous episode, or you just know anyway, there's going to be 5 seasons in total. So why am I saying only 4 phases? Well, there's the 5th one, which isn't strictly about Sauron, but I'll talk about that at the end. So if we begin with the first phase of Sauron in the Second Age, this is like following the aftermath of the War of Wrath. He of course was on Morgoth's side and they lost, but we're gonna see him be very scared, I'm sure, because of the fact he does not want to go to Valinor, because that is where, if you remember, Morgoth did actually end up being imprisoned there for thousands of years. So Sauron is not going to end up doing that, and of course he had a lot of power, so under Morgoth, to give all of that up, he's not going to be wanting to do that willy-nilly. And this pride, this is going to get in his way, because of course this is where he sees himself as kind of like the saviour of Middle-earth, and I think this is what's going to kind of catapult him nicely into his second phase. Then moving on to the second phase, this is when he truly sees the disorder and the abandonment, and he sees it as his duty to actually kind of solve that problem in Middle-earth, because the Valar, as he sees it, have completely abandoned Middle-earth. So who better than he as one of the most powerful Maiar? Now, we're going to see a change in his character here between phase 1 and phase 2. You kind of go from a moody teenager to someone with a bit more drive, like they've got some purpose now perhaps, that sort of thing. And well, this is when he then hatches his plan to kind of dominate Middle-earth. And how's he going to do this? Well, he of course goes to the men, because men are weak. But he also goes among the elves as Annatar. So this is going to be quite interesting, because he might end up going to LOTRonPrime, he might end up going to Erungalin. Of course, during this period of time, these areas are very different, and indeed Thranduil's halls that you might know from like The Hobbit and things like that, that doesn't exist just yet. Thranduil's not the king either. So there's going to be a lot of changes, but he's not going to get into Lindon. It's unclear whether or not they'll show him trying to get in, but the main place he will get into is Eregion, of course, Celebrimbor's realm. And it's in this area where it's going to be most interesting, because of course he then goes there and teaches them how to make the Rings of Power, and that is going to be like one of the best things that could possibly come out of this series for me personally, because I really want to see that. But you're going to end up seeing him going to Mordor and crafting the One Ring, and I don't know if they're going to be able to really make this all coherently get into the same season, because it's a lot to get in, because after that you get the War of the Elves and Sauron, and that of course comes to a head with Celebrimbor quite gruesomely. So again, if they manage to get this all into one season, I'd be very impressed. But it's going to be amazing if they were to follow this kind of phase structure. Moving on then to the third phase, and again I think this could be a really, really good one, because this is obviously the aftermath of the War of Sauron and the Elves, but the Númenorians came in to steal his thunder as he was on the verge of victory. So he's going to be seeking retribution, but there's going to be a really long time period in between the second and third phases, because I think this is going to focus on him being captured by the Númenóreans, by him saying, you know, I'm the Lord of the Earth, and therefore no one can best me. Ar-Pharazôn comes and captures him, and he gets taken to Númenor. This is probably going to be the most akin to Game of Thrones, because I think there's going to be a lot of politics here, potentially, between the faithful servants of, you know, the Valar in Númenor and the King's Men. So Elendil's forefathers versus the King's Men, essentially. And if they do add, I mean, there's so many things that they could really put into the fall of Númenor that I could go on for a very long time, so I'm not going to. Needless to say, of course, it does fall, and then he kind of gets sucked out of the vortex, as he does. But that's it for phase 3. And then finally, we get the 4th phase of Sauron in the Second Age. So he started being in the contemplation stage. Then you had the war with the elves, crafting the rings of power. Then he destroyed Númenor from within. In the 4th phase, I've just titled it as Annihilation of everything that's left. So all the faithful, the remaining survivors of Númenor, the elves of Gil-galad and all the rest of them, this is when he's kind of going to put all of his pieces together and try and destroy them all. So you're probably not going to see a whole lot of like politics similar to what you did in phase 3. However, you might have some interesting dialogue between him and some black Númenóreans, because some of the Númenóreans that had sailed east to Middle-earth, founded colonies along the coast, they would have definitely still been loyal to Sauron. And that is, again, something that you do not see in any of the other, you know, like televised bits of lore or bits of canon or anything like that. So seeing some of those guys turn up perhaps in Mordor, that could be really interesting. Perhaps you're going to have some characters show up as naval commanders or something as the bad guys. I don't know, but of course this is all going to come to a fore in the Last Alliance. Are we going to see something about the Entwives in the Brownlands? Perhaps we will, but I mean, we know what happens in the end, right? And congratulations to you if you're still watching. And this is the 5th phase, but it's not of Sauron, it is of the Ringwraiths. Do you remember between the 2nd and 3rd phases, there's quite a big time period, or a big gap. So between the forging of the Rings of Power and the subjugation of Númenor. So I reckon, right, very little is known about the Ringwraiths, other than the fact, I think it was around the 23rd century of the Second Age. I'll put it somewhere around here just to make sure I got that correct. But that is when they first were seen in Middle-earth. Before that, they of course did have the One Rings, or not the One Rings, but the rings, and they kind of fell into wraithdom. If we got some kind of backstory about them, that would be really good. We only know that 3 of them were Númenóreans, or of Númenorian descent at least, and the rest, who knows? They were great kings, some were like sorcerers. Yeah, it would be really interesting to see something about them, their backstory, and that would really fill that that whole millennium really quite nicely. So there you go, 5 phases of Sauron and the Ringwraiths that would fit perfectly within the 5 seasons of Amazon's Lord of the Rings-esque TV series. So thank you very much for watching, and if you can like the video, it helps me out a lot, allegedly. If you want to comment, you can do. I might get some video ideas out of them, to be honest, in the future. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss those, then do click the subscribe button, which is down there somewhere. But thank you very much for watching. I am going with Gandalf now. Good day.